All right, good afternoon. I am Brett Whitnell, and we're excited that you're here. And the session, as you can tell, is cornfield, cows, and e-commerce. So I guess that was interesting enough that some of you joined, so we're glad to have you with us. This will be an interactive session, so if you have questions, please raise your hand. And if you don't want to speak, I will go to the chat format and ask questions to our presenters. So without further ado, our presenters are Greg Mason and Phil Maccabee, and I'll let them take it from here.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks.
Oh, and one more thing, this will be on-demand video, so you can listen to it later.
Thank you, Brett. And good afternoon, everyone. I appreciate you all sitting in on this presentation / workshop that's going to be conducted by myself and Phil Maccabee. Just by way of brief introduction, my name is Gregory Mason. I am the Dean of Workforce Innovation, Adult and Basic and Continuing Education at Shawnee Community College. And my colleague is Phil Maccabee. And Phil, you want to give him a brief introduction about who you are?
Yes, my name is Phil Maccabee, and I'm a consultant. I've been working in the space of instructional design over the last, I want to say 40 years, but I don't want to date myself. I worked in every discipline from aerospace to healthcare to automotive. Some of my clients have been Toyota, Boeing, Cox Communications, on and on. I don't want to bore you. The more important thing is that we're here today and looking forward to sharing some really great information with you.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so we have a PowerPoint presentation. So can I share my screen?
Yes, you can.
Thank you. Okay. Our presentation for today, as Brett said, was cornfields, cows, and e-commerce. And I came up with that title. It may sound literally kind of corny, but I thought it was appropriate for what we're trying to do here in southernmost Illinois in trying to advance e-commerce in this region. Hold on. Yeah. The purpose of this presentation is to examine some of the challenges that are faced by rural small businesses in embracing online selling and how Shawnee Community College is attempting to mitigate those barriers to e-commerce and support greater participation by sponsoring an e-commerce website. The topic for discussion will include today, understanding how rural small business owners' comfort level with technology acceptance affects their attitude toward the adoption of internet technology. That we're going to identify some key factors in the business owner's experience that will influence their decision to implement internet marketing and selling strategies. And then how the SBDC here at Shawnee Community College is using its e-commerce website to familiarize rural small business owners with online selling. And then we'll talk about how the lack of widespread broadband access limits e-commerce growth for rural small businesses. Just by way of background, that the evidence is already out there that online tools and technology help small businesses expand their customer base, into their own community, neighboring states, and in some cases outside the country. Unfortunately, the technology is still not widely adopted by rural small businesses in Southern Illinois, and we'll talk about that. That Illinois is rated 13th among all states by what's called adaptation to the new economic order. And this is the degree in which a state's economy has become more reliant on innovation as new technology become critical drivers of productivity and competitiveness. But despite that relatively high ranking, outside the metropolitan areas, Illinois' economy still is rooted in industrial age economy with jobs that are based traditional manufacturing, agriculture, and lower skilled services. And these are industries which have experienced insignificant growth or decline in the recent past. And this means that we have a less educated workforce and a less developed innovation infrastructure in rural Illinois. If there's going to be significant economic expansion in the rural parts of the state, we have to be able to rapidly adapt to this new economy using technology to spur innovation among our local small businesses. Again, in terms of background, the why of e-commerce, that the data shows that in spite of the economic downturn, and perhaps in fact spurred by COVID-19, that there's been a huge boom in online selling and e-commerce. In fact, almost 200 billion in the first quarter of this year alone, which is up almost 40% from the previous year in the same quarter. That nearly $1 of every $5 spent on retail purchases come from digital ordering, which suggests that the pandemic boom isn't done yet and it's not likely to stop. This is particularly important to small retailers like we have here in Southern Illinois, and that small retailers saw a big bump in online sales during this past holiday season, an average of 104% from last year. And it's going to remain a top trend for small businesses moving forward. That e-commerce usage continues to grow among small businesses, with 80% reporting that at least a quarter of the revenue came from online sales in 2021, January 2021, which is up from 7% in April of last year. Okay. So just to talk briefly about what the goals and objectives of our e-commerce business support project was. It was to promote the use of e-commerce in rural Southern Illinois. And we sponsored development of an e-commerce site and e-commerce training beginning last year using CARES Act funding. And the specific goals were: one, to understand the perception and readiness of entrepreneurs and small business owners pertaining to e-commerce. Two, to assess the current level of e-commerce used by small businesses in the district served by Shawnee. And then to assess the infrastructure needs of small businesses for e-commerce activity. To understand some of the challenges and opportunities presented by e-commerce or for e-commerce, you have to understand a little bit about downstate Illinois and the counties that we serve. It is largely rural, fewer than 55,000 people, extensive farmland, and we're separated by the Shawnee National Forest. We are considered a Tier 3 economic development region, which means that we have primarily occupations of service, natural resources, construction and maintenance, production, transportation, and material moving. The other part of this is that this area is largely dominated again by tourism and again, small mom and pop shop businesses. The area is considered economically depressed. Small businesses represent 90% of all businesses in our 5-county district. There's a limited amount of job creation, and this challenges the attraction and retention of a viable workforce, which in turn will impact the decision of some of our small businesses to embrace or to not embrace e-commerce. Younger residents with education and training often leave the region due to a lack of economic opportunities, and the area is on a slow decline to getting older, less educated, and less competitive. As I mentioned previously, part of what spurred our focus on developing an e-commerce website and training for our small business was the impact of COVID-19. That the pandemic exposed some very acute and deep-rooted connections between physical and economic health within the region. on small businesses, that we've had a number of small businesses that had forced closing, modified reopenings, and weakened demand. And this has had an impact on our communities, which were already struggling from a poor economy, business closures, and job losses caused by the pandemic. So, COVID was a spur for what we were doing, but the area has already been suffering for some time already. We're going to talk about the project goal was to create a fully functional e-commerce training website for small businesses. And in beginning this project, we made certain assumptions. We assumed that local area small businesses would be interested in pursuing online marketing and selling, and that there would be enough of an infrastructure in the region to support increased e-commerce, and that the costs associated with promoting e-commerce among local small businesses could be offset by the potential return on investment of increased exposure to new customers and expansion of the existing client base. The process that we use to develop the e-commerce website is we're going to go through, and I'm going to turn this over at this moment to Phil Maccabee, who was hired as a consultant to be the project manager for this endeavor. And he's going to talk to you a little bit about the project management process and what we went through to achieve what we did.
Hey, does anybody have any questions on what Greg has said so far? It's maybe a good point here if there's any questions. Okay, Bill?
Can we go back one slide, please? If you see at the end where it says AI and e-commerce, we may and may not be able to do that depending on the time that we have. We didn't update that particular chart, but I'm going to move forward. So that's our workflow. That's our agenda. We're going to do project management, data collection and analysis, and e-commerce site. And Greg and I are going to jump back and forth and take over different parts of this. Next slide, please. Okay. To run an effective project management, project, one thing that you really need to think about is the idea of risk management. So there are many risks going into this project. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk just shortly about risk assessment and risk management. Going to go through a couple of definitions so we're all on the same page. So the definition of risk is an event that has a realistic likelihood of occurring and an unfavorable consequence to technical, schedule, and cost performance. Okay, next, risk management. Risk management is a formal process for identifying, assessing, and responding to risks so that the technical, schedule, and cost objectives are met. So the asterisk is technical includes everything that is not cost or schedule. Okay, project risk factors. 1, we were working with small business owners who might be technologically neophytes. They may be new to web technologies. 2, the ability of small business owners to deliver the necessary assets that you need to build their e-commerce websites. And we're talking about quality images, product prices, inventory levels, product descriptions, and deliver all that in a timely manner. 3rd, we needed to overcome reluctance and fears that small business owners may have regarding their participation in the project. Now, I'm going to let Greg talk a little bit about technology challenge.
One of the things that is noted and what we encountered in this project was the degree of technology acceptance. And when we talk about technology acceptance, we're talking about the ability or the capacity of an individual to accept and embrace technological changes, innovation, and how comfortable they are with that. One of the things that, and we'll talk about that further down, that some of the challenges we encountered in conducting this project and building the site was that there was a considerable amount of reluctance and some fears among the small business owners to embrace this technology, to embrace this idea, this concept of doing e-commerce. Yes, they were all familiar with e-commerce. I mean, who hasn't ordered something off of Amazon or Walmart? But when it came to using that same technology for their business, a number of the businesses we worked with were shy about it and admitted it, that they were shy about it and that they were not totally comfortable with engaging in technology that way. And this was something we had to spend a considerable amount of time working with them for, because in order to move this project forward, there's a number of, as Phil said, assets that these individuals would have to give to us in order to construct the website representing their product and services.
Okay, so the other side of risk is risk mitigation. So, you know, we've identified the risks. So now how do we mitigate those risks? Number one, we collected data at the outset of the project so we could get a clear vision of the challenges. Second, we needed to go slow. We need to work with the business owners where they were with technology and encourage their cooperation, of course. On the design side, we need to design a straightforward process for collecting information from small business owners for building the websites. And we use Google Cloud for all of that.
And Phil, I just want to interrupt for a minute. And then one of the things in doing this and creating these forms, that the idea was to make it very easy for the small business owners to enter the data that we needed. And in some cases, if they did not have the technology or were not comfortable, we invited those individuals to come to the college, and then a member of the staff would help them enter the data. But again, the idea was to make it very straightforward and that they could then put this information in themselves, because we stressed to them that we can't build the website and we can't promote e-commerce for them without their information. And a part of this process was, in fact, providing them with e-commerce training so that they would know that this is what you would do in creating or in putting information into a website if you were going to engage in e-commerce. Go ahead, Phil, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so the central idea behind number 3 is that we centralize all the data in one location, okay? Next, one of our challenges, as we said prior, was collecting information in a timely manner. So it was like herding cats. I'll be straightforward. And so I had to assign one of the web developers the task of literally picking up the phone and calling the small business owners and reminding them that we needed timely, transfer of data to us. And that ended up mitigating that challenge. Number 5, design a simple, responsive e-commerce website. If you're not familiar with the word responsive, basically it means the following. The website runs on your mobile phone, a tablet, a desktop, etc. Number 6 is sort of like a follow-on to that, established functionality of the website across multiple platforms. That's kind of redundant, the same things. One of the challenges was standardizing the back-end e-commerce component. And we decided to go with PayPal because it was simple and fast, and it was easy for people to sign up and use it. Some of the small business owners already had PayPal, so it was like a no-brainer. And then finally, we had to utilize the best available talent. Of course, there wasn't talent available in the region, so we had to reach out, and we had some remote workers that were very good, web designers and developers, and they were very fast. Next slide, please. So even though we're using the term website, it's websites, okay? There's a central website, which is Hatito, and then we have 4 different satellites. So the way that we built it is that the functionality will allow us to build it out to as many people in the future that decide they want to do this. They want to jump on this program etc. So it's a simple hub and spoke design. We had a designer that sort of used the idea of the concepts from the region. And as you can tell by my backdrop, you know, the outside, etc. The word Hatito is Shawnee Indian for welcome. So we thought that we would tie that in. Another thing that we did in the design, we wanted to connect the business owners with the website. So you'll see later on the demo, you'll see what we do about. And we have very nice, friendly verbiage about the owners. So because we're trying to make a connection with the owners and the community, et cetera. I think I'm going to jump over now. I think, can I share?
Yeah, I'm gonna stop my share and then I'll turn it over and then you should be able to share.
Okay. There we go.
And let me just jump in for a minute. As Phil mentioned, the name of the site is Hatito. And as he said, this is, Hatito is a word from the Native American Shawnee that used to populate this region of the state. And as Phil mentioned, that it was their word for welcome, and that we incorporated that. We wanted to incorporate some elements from the region into the site to speak to the history of the site, but also in particular because the Shawnee people that lived here were noted for many things, but one of the things they were noted for was for being tradespeople who practiced and proliferated a lot of trading throughout the region. And so we thought that was a nice connection to what we were trying to do. And then to show in the background the Shawnee, the Gardens of the Gods, because we thought, again, that's something that's very representative of the region, that people see that and know what it is. We wanted to have a website that was distinctive, that spoke to, southernmost Illinois, and we wanted to get feedback and continue to get some feedback from our businesses about how we could tweak that. But we thought that in creating this website, it would be something that would be uniquely, visually unique to Southern Illinois. All right, Phil.
Okay. So this is the mothership. Now, I just want to talk about something really quickly. This is sort of an advanced functionality, but we were talking to some of the small businesses about some of our businesses that had products that were digital products, whereas somebody was actually doing poetry. So we decided to integrate a test of a Zoom. So in future websites, we'll be able to integrate Zoom where the business person will be able to speak directly to their customers. Think of it as your own home shopping network, a Visa Zoom. Scrolling down. So now what we're going to do, I'm going to go into one of the sites. There's a standardization about these sites so far as the usage. So let's jump into Creative Hands. Can you see it? Did it switch?
Yes. Can you do full screen?
Yes, I can. One moment. How's that?
Yes, that's better. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, course is home. Let's go into the store. And these are the products. And it works like any other e-commerce website. Going to add some items to the cart. Going to view our cart. And it works like your standard website. Also, it collects all the users' purchases, etc. And that's really important. Right now in the e-commerce space, artificial intelligence is having a huge impact. And of course, Amazon is leading on this. That's why when you pull into Amazon, you see all those recommendations, et cetera. Those are generated by AI. So now, what I was talking about prior, let's look at about. So this is Meet Alice. She's a proprietor. There's her bio. It's short, pithy, to the point, and gives you a sense of who she is and what kind of business she's running. Of course, it has contact information, your cart, etc. Also, you can have your account details, orders, addresses, lost password, etc. So this template was reflected throughout throughout the other websites. It's pretty straightforward. And let me see if I can, well, I can't really show you on this, but later on we'll send you out a link. So if you want to go to this and check it out on your phones later on, you can go to hatito.store, not com.store. And you can browse through, maybe want to purchase some items. Let me see, is there anything else? Yeah, that's pretty much it for, oh yes, we also, I'm sorry, we also loaded in if they had any social media accounts, we loaded those in. So you could actually tap or communicate the business owner through social media. Yes?
And then also they don't they get analytics? They can get analytics about.
Yeah.
So you want to talk a little bit about the analytics?
Yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about analytics, which is sort of a future thing because it's kind of it's advanced. With the websites, they have a back end that's connected to Google Analytics, and they get information about who's accessing the website, when they're accessing the website, what browser they're using. It's a huge amount of information, but they're going to have to grow into that and the ability to use that tool because it's pretty advanced. So we have room for growth as they want to grow with the technology, as they're training and their comfort level with the technology grows. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Greg, I'm handing it back over to you.
Okay. So part of this process with the clients has been to involve them every step of the way in constructing this site. Again, part of the plan was not simply just to create a site, but to familiarize business owners with the mechanics of it, to take some of the mystery out of it, to take some of the fear out of it, to get them to embrace the technology by removing some of the fear that they may have. And the clients that we have, some are familiar with e-commerce and do some e-commerce on their own through their Facebook sites. Some do not have any experience whatsoever. And so we tried to find a middle ground of being able to help folks understand what's going on, and depending on their comfort level and interest, they can get more into the meat of the website. If it were, as Phil mentioned, they can get more information about the analytics if they want, which can certainly help them. And we are encouraging them to use that data as a way to, again, assess whether the website's being effective or not. Because at the end of the day, what will happen is that eventually we will ask them to begin supporting the website so that it is sustainable, but at a price point that is reasonable for a small business, and that they get a level of functionality and a level of exposure that if they were doing that on their own or through some other vendor, it would probably be a lot more expensive for them. But the idea also is that we provide that support service and help them understand that it's not just to put their product, but it's to be a teaching tool So whether they use this site or any other site, they have a greater understanding of what they can expect and should get from any type of e-commerce site, and ultimately be able to measure, is it working? Has it helped? Has it helped my business? Have I gotten more customers? Have I seen more sales? One of the statistics that I mentioned earlier was that a quarter of the businesses, small businesses that do online retail, talk about the increase that they get from that in this region, with a shrinking population, that small businesses that do not begin to embrace e-commerce will find that their customer base is shrinking as well. That the idea of an e-commerce site is to give them reach beyond their town, their county, or this region of the state, that they can their product and services can reach literally globally with the site. And one of the things that Phil, will be working with them on is, again, the algorithms that are used, so that when someone is looking for a particular product online, that their product will come up on a search engine, and that person will be directed to the Atito site. One of the things that I have done as part of this project is reach out to Amazon. Amazon has a Black Business Accelerator program that they've been using to support the growth of minority-owned business, and also businesses of other disadvantaged and targeted populations. So I reached out to them directly, and that they have expressed an interest in helping to support what we're doing, and that we are training people to get them familiar with e-commerce, using this as a training site, and then eventually they're going to be handed over to Amazon, who has said that they will waive the fees for the businesses that we send to them, and then provide them with mentors and help make sure that their products get to put to the forefront of Amazon's site. So we're very excited about that piece. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to add in, when you look out at the rest of the world, specifically China, they have a website. There's a couple of websites they have. One is Alibaba, the other one is AliExpress, and the third one is Bao, I think that's the name of it. And these websites are full of small businesses that are selling products to the world. So I just wanted to mention that as FYI. Anyway, next slide.
Okay. So to achieve this site and to create this, a lot of work went behind the scenes in the back end to come to where we did with the Atito site. And part of it was data collection. And so in order to get a site that we felt would be responsive to the needs and the interests of our small business, we gathered data, as anyone would do. And we sent out mail surveys. We did a stratified sample of approximately 200 of our SBDC small business clients. And the stratification was done across the region. So we wanted to make sure that we contacted businesses across our 5-county area. And then based on certain industry categories, we primarily targeted businesses that had a tangible product to sell. Though, as Phil mentioned, we had one business that had, what was a spoken word? Phil, was that what it was? The business owner that didn't have a product per se.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. He was a poet.
Right, a poet.
Yeah.
And but generally speaking, the survey went out to businesses that actually would have a product to market online. The final response rate was 8%, which means we had about 16 respondents out of the 200. Not great. I mean, so statistically, I can't say that it's statistically significant, but that was the response we got. And we wanted to go ahead and get moving on the project. The survey that we created focused on assessing the level of e-commerce used by small businesses. So we wanted to see what they were already doing, if anything, in terms of e-commerce. And then we wanted to get the perceptions that they had about e-commerce. I mentioned earlier about technology acceptance, that if a business owner is reluctant or adverse to using technology, then it's a harder sell to get them to engage in e-commerce. So we wanted to know what they were feeling. In addition to the mail survey, we did telephone and in-person interviews that were conducted with them concerning their e-commerce use and what they felt were the infrastructure necessary for e-commerce. And we asked these questions of the small business owners themselves and or their top managers, if that's who was designated to respond to our questions. The goal was to establish a dialogue about relevant e-commerce issues with a diverse group of individuals. And this diverse group included people of color, women, veteran-owned businesses. So we wanted to get as diverse a group as possible, and then devise strategies for how we could enhance e-commerce activity in the region. What we learned from the surveys and interview was that 25% of the small business owners who responded are engaged in some aspect of e-commerce. As I mentioned earlier, many of those said that they use Facebook for doing their marketing in e-commerce. None of them actually had their own e-commerce website or was engaged in that kind of level, but through their Facebook account. 80% of the small business owners who responded, who engaged in e-commerce, felt that the benefit for having e-commerce was allowing them to respond more quickly to the specific needs of their clients, that they saw this as a way to increase opportunity for sales compared to some of their traditional methods. And again, we started this last fall during the pandemic, and many of these same businesses had experienced and were experiencing a decline in sales and customers because of the pandemic, because they were traditional brick and mortar stores. They also saw the benefit that it was a way to access some new markets and customers, improve their productivity, and increase their organizational image. The businesses that are, felt that by being able to say that they did e-commerce gave them a more modern appeal, and that they didn't look as if they were backwards, or that they were small fry, that they felt that e-commerce gave them the opportunity to compete with other competitors and bigger competitors on a relatively level playing field. That 75% of the small business owners who responded did cite a lack, and these are the people who did not engage in e-commerce. They felt that there wasn't a perceived usefulness for them. They felt they didn't have the skills and knowledge to do e-commerce by themselves or their employees, and that there was a general mistrust of the technology as a primary reason why they did not engage in e-commerce. And this speaks back to the earlier slide, that one of the issues that challenges e-commerce growth in this region is the the group of people that these small businesses might normally turn to, younger, the younger workforce, the digital natives, as you would say, they're not staying. They're not staying in the region, so it becomes more difficult for a business to engage someone and hire them for the workforce, whether that's as a full-time hire or as a consultant, if they can't find those people in the region.
Greg, we have a question from Todd.
Yes.
Says, would it be interesting to know the extent to which the pandemic convinced some to go with commerce for the first time?
Yes. And one of the things we will be doing is a follow-up survey, because we wanted to do some before and after, and that, by this fall, we will have had almost 12 months of data and experience with that, and we want to find out why, and has it been worth it? But nationally, we know that yes, the pandemic has stimulated a lot more e-commerce sale, but that was not initially, that was not one of the specific questions we asked as to why they would engage in e-commerce. From those that did not choose to engage in e-commerce, the data we received was that, again, they did not, one of the things they felt was they did not have enough capital or expertise to launch an e-commerce site. They didn't feel that they had the money, or again, the money to do it themselves or to hire somebody to do it, which is, again, one of the reasons that we felt the need to build this e-commerce site, to give them a vehicle to explore e-commerce activity without incurring the cost that they would normally run for having an e-commerce site or putting their site, going with a vendor of e-commerce sites. This was an interesting one. I thought that the second comment was that they didn't believe there was a strong need for e-commerce because their customer base does not traditionally use the internet or social media to aid in purchases. That speaks to something, again, perhaps it's unique to this region, but not surprising, because one of the things that they cited was that they liked being able to create a personal relationship with their clients when they come into the store or come into the shop, and they didn't feel like they could get that through e-commerce, that it was too impersonal. They also felt that there were questions about broadband access and the availability of internet technology infrastructure, which is a very deep concern in this region. I think that, and I would have to double check, but basically about fewer than, well, maybe about 40%, maybe 50% of the population now actually has access to to broadband internet, but majority of the region still lacks that kind of access. And because of that, there was concern about, even among those businesses that do e-commerce, there was concern about relying on internet performance and reliability and security to entrust their business activities online. And then also there was, interestingly, cited a general lack of awareness concerning e-commerce legal issues such as taxation. There was concern that would they have to would they be taking taxes out? How do they pay that? And I don't know, I can't remember, Phil, on the website, I don't think we built in yet the tax piece
Yes, all that is built in.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, thank
All
you.
the tax and everything is built in automatically.
Okay. So we try to address all of their fears and concerns in a very simple way, that our reach out to them was try it. that you, and this was the other reason why we had set up the PayPal account. So no one had to use a personal checking account or their credit card or give anyone access to their personal banking information. They set up a PayPal account, and individuals who go to the site and purchase items can then pay into the PayPal account. We also talked about that as part of the e-commerce training is making sure that they could deliver the product in a timely fashion when people did purchase their product. One of the things we discovered that from our survey that the results were consistent with national research, that small businesses are more likely to use internet marketing and e-commerce in the rural area if they already have a customer base that uses technology. And those that don't have that customer base generally do not engage in e-commerce. Back to again that a lot of them feel they don't have enough capital, human resources to take advantage of the opportunities associated with e-commerce. That and back to that they feel like they rely on their personal relationships that they build with their customers, and that they're not comfortable with the perceived interpersonal aspect of e-commerce. And then again, that they believe that acquiring the knowledge and expertise.
Nothing, I just caught, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, that acquiring the knowledge and expertise necessary to engage in e-commerce is a significant challenge for them. One of the things we saw in talking with the business owners, both those who do and those who didn't engage in e-commerce, was something of a feeling that this was an extra add-on to what they were doing, that if I'm a welder and I'm a welding business, now you're going to ask me to be an IT guy. And some felt that they didn't feel comfortable with taking on that knowledge and that expertise, and that they saw was a barrier to them embracing e-commerce.
Okay, you have a question there. Were there any challenges with logistics and fulfilling orders?
Not that we've heard yet, no, because so far it's been very small. I mean, the businesses that have been selling, they have gotten only a few orders, and we're working on ways to promote the site more, so that we can hopefully see a significant increase in the sales. But so far, no one has reported any issue with fulfilling orders. One of the things that Phil talked to them about early on in the training would be to have a significant amount of inventory, and that on the site that there is a listing of how much of product of that particular thing is available, that a customer can then see that maybe I want to buy a widget and there's 15 widgets, and I buy one and now there's 14. The seller also is being able to track that, so the seller can be aware of, the depletion of their inventory. But so far, there's not been enough of a big boost in sales where anybody's complaining that, we're running out of inventory. So that hasn't been an issue. We would love for them to get to that point. Some other factors that we integrated into development of the website was that, as a whole, rural Southern Illinois does not see itself, does not have an image of being high tech. And as a result of that, there is as of yet no critical mass of small business users who are engaging with the technology infrastructure, which has been a disincentive for telecommunications provider to provide better quality service. When I arrived here almost 3 years ago, I reached out to both Verizon and Sprint to see if the college could engage them as a partner in providing better service, and to the extent that talk to them about the potential of installing a satellite or a cell tower on Shawnee's property or something on one of Shawnee's buildings, with the idea that they would increase the service and the quality of the service. And they flatly told me no, they weren't interested. There wasn't enough of either a residential population or a business population to make it worth their while to invest more in infrastructure. The hope is that Whisper, which is a internet service provider in Mattoon, received the single largest grant from the federal government for developing broadband infrastructure. I think they received something of $270 million. And I talked to their owner, and they have a timetable of basically 6 years in which they are, under their grant, supposed to provide widespread broadband access throughout this region and several adjoining states. So it's coming, it's just not here yet. One of the other things that we've looked at is Elon Musk and his satellites that are intended to provide broadband access irregardless of where you are. And we're following that development to see at what point will they be actually distributing the satellite dishes that people can buy, that they can set up and give them broadband access without worried about cables and lines and whatever. So it's coming, but it's an issue. That businesses that are engaged in e-commerce, they did express that they are generally confident about safe, secure, and reliable internet for engaging in their e-commerce business, though they are wary of hacking, viruses, and possible loss of data. And one of the things that we have done in the training of those businesses that are engaged with the Atito site is the reliability of it, the security of it, but also instructing them on what things they need to do as business owners to make sure that their transactions are safe and secure. The last thing that we found in our data assessment was that because of the remoteness of some of the areas in Southern Illinois, that the cost of e-commerce is prohibitive, that there are several different service providers in the area, and they have very different pricing schemes. Just sort of depends on where you're located and what kind of services you're asking for. And again, that's something we really can't impact. That's people just have to be aware of that. But again, we are hoping that because we are providing access to an e-commerce site, that businesses can try it out, see what it's like, hopefully see the benefit of it, so that they can make a more informed decision about whether they want to expand and go on to create their own e-commerce site or engage with other vendors. One of the things that Phil talks about with them is, here's what things cost. Here's what it would cost for these types of services. Here's what it costs to do this. One of the issues that came up that was a challenge was getting high quality photographic images of their products. That, as a college, we had difficulty finding photographers who could take the time and would actually come and shoot photographs of the business's products. And we would have days set up where we would arrange a photographer come and people could bring their product or products and have professional shots done so that the image would be of high quality for the website. Okay, all right. And that's essentially where we refer as the e-commerce piece. And as I said, Phil, we have time to talk about the AI piece, which is tied to this website, that this website is intended to be, again, not just a website, but also a teaching and training tool. And there is an AI component to that. And Phil, do you want to talk a little bit about the AI component?
First of all, I think we need to open it up for questions before we jump into the AI component. Does anybody have any questions about anything up to this point before we jump into the AI component? Because it's a little bit of a side. Andy, how much time do we have?
We have plenty of time.
Oh, we do?
Mhm.
All right, so we're gonna move into a quick AI primer to introduce you to some concepts in AI and how it affects e-commerce. So I think I can do it with your slides. Greg, hit next. And okay, keep going.
Oh.
Want to go over to the AI section?
Oh, well, let me do this first. This is,
Okay.
I forgot this piece, that we listed some successes and challenges to our e-commerce project, that we currently have 6 businesses that are participating and 4 more interested in participating. 70% of the businesses are either minority or women-owned businesses. The participants like the ability to use site-generated analytics about their customers' buying habits, and that the business owners felt that having a dedicated online storefront gave their business a more modern appeal and leveled the playing field for competing with bigger competitors. Some of the challenges were, as we mentioned, technology acceptance, a lack of, on the part of the vendors or on the businesses, having some clear product descriptions, photography of their products, and then understanding the difference, the connection between inventory tracking and customer product demand. While we didn't have an issue with fulfillment, we did have a couple of vendors who weren't tracking their inventory and were a little concerned when they did come close to selling out. That we want to make sure they understand the cost of e-commerce and that the self-management piece, because we did emphasize that for e-commerce that it's not simply just plug and play. There are things that they need to do as business owners if they're going to conduct e-commerce.
You have a question here. What kind of businesses were most receptive?
The businesses that were most receptive to e-commerce were those businesses that had a particular product. In the case of Creative Hands, that focuses on, they're a Christian bookstore and Christian gift shop. So she has specific things that are geared to a particular market, and that one of the things we talk with her about is how to promote her, her Hatito site to the religious community, because that would be a group that's a targeted group that's more likely to be interested in her product. The other would be Gabriel Harris, the store that offered primarily African-American oriented products in terms of hair care, clothing, styles, that sort of thing. So a business that has a particular product that can be photographed and put on a site with a description and a price, they're the ones who have been most receptive. As Phil mentioned, we've had some inquiries from businesses that have services that they want to promote. And we're working with them in terms of, because I said, if you're providing a personal service, that one of those things is like with massages, that a person can purchase a gift certificate, but we're still working out how, if you're going to market a personal service of some kind, how that can be promoted on the site. As Phil mentioned, we do have the individual who's a poet, and I suppose the idea that you're able to buy a performance from him reciting his poetry. So that's a little more difficult. That we're trying to figure that one out ourselves.
Actually, we've already figured it out. It's pretty straightforward. There's a Zoom plugin that allows you to monetize Zoom meetings, etc. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So
Also,
go
Excuse
ahead.
me?
I was going to say, we've also got a business milkmaid. She comes from a growing up in a dairy background, and she has some pretty interesting products. And this may have been kind of pre-COVID, but she actually did some demonstrations of like staining furniture and different things like that. So that was a pretty interesting thing based on her background.
Yeah, Brett has touched on something really important. That business has very unique products, and unique products can be sold all over the world because they're basically one of a kind, right? So continuing on, right now in the retail and on the online space, the companies are using AI. Okay, so how are they using AI? They're using AI to predict customer behavior. Right now, there are AI algorithms that can predict within 80% accuracy, 80 to 85% accuracy of what an individual with a past history, say on Amazon, is going to purchase next. This is amazing stuff. It can help retail product placement. If you want to see an example of that in the real world, go visit a Target. And you can't figure out, why did I walk out with this stuff that I don't even need? It can help predict customer purchasing patterns and help with sales, targeted advertising, inventory control, help develop advertisement programs, and help with product development. Next slide.
Well, I would say, and this is a piece that, is being incorporated into the Atito site, because Phil has particular expertise in AI. And the idea is, again, this isn't meant just to be a site that allows them to sell. We do want that, but it's also meant to be a teaching and training tool that helps them understand, the mechanisms behind what they see or their customers see on a website. And these are, again, are tools that can be utilized by them to drive more business, in terms of purchasing or coming to their site, but using AI to help predict some of the customer behavior that, as Phil said, then you wonder why then, and you mentioned like Amazon, that when you make a purchase on Amazon, their AI algorithm is saying, okay, Phil purchased a pair of roller skates 6 months ago. He may want another pair of roller skates now, or he may want shoestrings to, need new shoestrings for the roller skates, or he may need roller skate grease, if there is such a thing, to keep his, the skates, lubricated. But the AI piece of that is taking that, that initial purchase and building on that, using data to predict what you will want to buy.
Yeah, so we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive. I'm going to switch it over and use my slide stack so you can discontinue.
Okay.
Okay, so what I'm going to talk about is just really brief introduction to AI. So you have some takeaways of understanding AI, because I believe it's very important to understand this technology. This is at a very straightforward level. This is not a deep dive, but I want you to have a takeaway with this. Okay, one moment. Okay, what is AI? artificial intelligence makes it possible for machines to learn from experience and adjust to new inputs and perform human-like tasks. So when we're talking about inputs, we're talking about data, okay? Machines, AI can learn from examples. So this is a view of AI, okay? So when we talk about artificial intelligence, it encompasses machine learning and deep learning. Not to scare you, this is pretty straightforward. Artificial intelligence applies deep learning and other techniques to solve actual problems. Think of recipes. So in the AI space, these recipes would be called algorithms. And you use specific algorithms to solve specific problems. You chain these algorithms together, or you chain these recipes together to solve a problem. Machine learning is a subset of AI. And then finally, we have deep learning, which deals with neurons, and they model it kind of off how the human mind works. Think of it as a huge filter, and this filter gets information one way, and it goes through all these neurons, and it comes back the other way, and it gets refined, so it's able to make decisions because of that process. Machine learning has a broad umbrella. That includes natural language processing, which you've probably interacted if you've done Siri or if you've done Google, right? Robotics, speech recognition, neural networks, and cognitive systems. What is AI good for? Everything, everything, including e-commerce. I don't know if you are following what's going on now with Tesla. They are at version 9 of their self-driving car. And if you want to see something breathtaking and amazing, go onto YouTube and watch AI at work. They're having a AI a day on the 19th of August, and I recommend that you view that broadcast online on YouTube. So how did AI happen? Succinctly, AI happened because of two things: the internet and the abundance of data that was collected, and also the cost of processing. Chip prices have went down, data has went up, so now it's the perfect storm to solve complex problems with tons and tons of data. This individual is Andrew Ng, and he has a quote, which is great. Data is the new electricity. It will drive our society for the next 100 years. While machine learning is based on the idea that machines should be able to learn and adapt through experience, AI refers to a broader idea where machines can execute tasks smartly. And when we say smartly, here's an example. On Wall Street, there are a group of gentlemen that are referred to as quants. And they sit around all day and they calculate possibilities and probabilities of stocks going up, down, all around. Now they have found out that AI algorithms can do that 24/7, and they don't take a coffee break and they don't get tired. So think if quants are being replaced, most of these quants have PhD in mathematics. So that's a whole discussion, but just to give you an idea. So can small businesses use AI? Maybe, yes or no. And the reason why that's kind of a convoluted answer, the answer actually is yes, but the maybe and no depends on preparation, and knowledge base. So once again, what AI can do for small businesses, this is redundant, but you get the idea. And so I say thank you for your attention, and that's all we have for now. Any questions?
Last chance for questions.
I have a couple. Thanks for this. This was fascinating. And I have a lot of, even though I'm in, Champaign, we're surrounded by corn. So we
Excuse
still have
me,
a
are
lot
you in
of,
Champaign, Urbana?
yes, sir.
Oh, that's my alma mater. U of
Hey,
I.
me too. too.
Yes.
You can see that, you can see my We Will Win basketball shirt, my rebounder shirt. Yeah, a lot of this stuff is really, really interesting. And I was fascinated by your information about sort of, acceptance and traction and things, because this is a big, big deal. And ironically, as you found, the pandemic helped in that way because it forced a lot of businesses to do it that just didn't. I mean, I've been in tech pretty much my whole private sector career, and for someone to say, I own a retail business and I don't know why I should be online.
Mhm.
That's a tough place to start. But at least in the pandemic made a lot of people realize I'm out of business if I'm not online. So there was that. But what were sort of if you have sort of some anecdotes or sort of fine points, what were some of the most sort of poignant realizations that you got from some of these businesses? Were there any really like aha moments with these businesses?
Yeah, I can take a yes. A aha moment when we were having these discussions and focus groups is and I mentioned it earlier, at least among those who did not see themselves embracing e-commerce, was they felt that they could not touch their client, that they enjoy the social aspect so much of the client coming into their shop, coming into the store. And I mentioned to them, but we're in the midst of a pandemic. And so you're not reaching those clients, they're not coming in. And because you don't have another vehicle to reach out to them, so you potentially could lose them. And so, but this reluctance, and as I said, that there's this, and truthfully, the majority of the business owners who did not or do not see themselves embracing e-commerce are older. They're not digital natives, and they're very, very fearful of this. And that's something that I did not. I quite frankly, I was surprised at the level of apprehension about engaging in e-commerce. Even though I've asked them, I said, do you buy something from Amazon online? Yeah. Do you buy something from Walmart? And they would say, yeah. And I said, so, and I honestly, I've said, I'm not sure I understand your reluctance, because you're a consumer who you clearly understand the benefit of e-commerce, yet you're denying yourself and your business that opportunity. And they, the one gentleman said, he admitted it, it's not rational, just an emotional thing. He feels like he's so old that, he said, I can't wait till this pandemic is over and people can come back to my store, and they sit around and they talk. And so it's a very emotional thing, that need for that personal communication. And because we're in a region where everybody knows everybody. But I did point out, but, and by his own admission, his business has been in decline for many years, because again, his established client base has gotten older, moved off, or in some cases has died. And he's not moved to the new economy that says by bringing your product online, you had a potential to acquire new customers and perhaps even expand services to the existing people. So that was an aha moment. I guess I was taken aback by the the reluctance, the very palpable reluctance to embrace e-commerce?
I have an aha slide that I want to share. I'm coming at it at a very different way because I'm in California, and you know the intensity of tech out here is intense, right? So I'm just going to go through a couple of things that were really surprising to me, and I want to make sure that I don't come out with a negative tone, but I'm just sharing my experience as a technology person, right? In this space, okay? So let me see if I can share this real quick. It's a quick list. So in traditional retail, you know, product descriptions, you know, you walk into the store, right? Online, you need to have a description, you know, describe that product. 2, we live in a media-rich environment now. So the quality of your photos tell a big story about your business. Okay, so that's one point. And so all this came as a little bit of a shock to me because, you know, it was just a different experience working with different customers. Also, understanding the connection between inventory tracking and customer product demand. Like, did the small businesses have their arms around, really have arms around their inventory to the point that it was easily able to move over into the e-commerce digital space? Next is having good copy for websites, you know, good copy. This is who I am. This is what I'm selling. This is who I am, you know, because we need the fidelity of images and the fidelity of writing need to really be looked at and worked on, because that's going to put a balance on how effective your website is. Then there's cost, of course. Communication between business owners and technology lead, myself. And that was a challenge because we initially started out a little bit too fast. We were demanding too much from the small businesses too quick because we were used to it working in a very high-speed environment. You know what I mean? So we had to really ratchet back our expectations of when things would be delivered. And we had to really slow walk. And meeting with my associates, we talked through how we were going to do this, and we put in a plan, and it actually was successful because we were able to get everything we needed, et cetera. But that was a lesson learned for us. The next question was self-managing websites. So that's going to be a process because they have 2 options. They can hire somebody to manage the website for them, or they can manage it themselves, which is a challenge. We don't have the absolute answer to that, but I'm just putting that out as aha. How is that going to work over time? And then lastly, what Greg talked about prior, technology acceptance problem. So that's from an IT guy, tech point of view, that was the experience that our group had when we were producing the website.
And, you know, Don, one of the things that, you know, again, in our conversation with the businesses, and we were stressing, is that, you know, even in Southern Illinois, they're in competition. That they're in competition with businesses that are doing e-commerce, who may be reaching out to clients here in this region that they may have traditionally relied on, who are able to provide a product and a service, and trying to, in some cases, get that sense of urgency amongst them that you're in competition, and if you're not going online, and it's not to say your business won't survive, but clearly the trends are showing that online purchasing is here to stay. It's not going away. That consumer out there likes that flexibility and convenience of buying online. And that if you don't do this, if you don't embrace it, that at the very least, you're limiting your growth, you're limiting the potential profit generation, and perhaps even putting yourself at risk for survival. And, again, trying to get folks to understand, and we try to keep the tech talk down. That we didn't really want them to get into the meat of, here's what the algorithm does and all that, because as Phil said, we found that was too much. But what we wanted to do is explain, give them an understanding of how it works, to take away some of that fear, alleviate some of those reservations, and hopefully entice them to be curious enough to at least try it out so that they could explore what it is like to do e-commerce in a safe environment that wasn't going to cost them anything. So there was risk, they were risking nothing in terms of their, paying for something, a service they might not need, might not want, or couldn't use, but try it out. So we really tried to ease them into it, but that did mean slow walking some things that we had hoped to have done much sooner and have accomplished much quicker. But since the purpose was to help them embrace e-commerce, and I talked to Phil and said, let's slow walk it, let's make sure they're comfortable, but continue to push them, because if the only change you embrace is the change you're comfortable with, well, you're going to be left behind. And we're trying to emphasize to these businesses that you're running the risk of being left behind because your competitors are going online. And like I said, that's not going to go away.
I'm a super duper idealist, and I believe that manufacturing and high tech can come to rural America. And I believe that because of COVID and because a lot of IT people are moving to rural America because they can do their work remote. Why not live on 5 acres with a beautiful view of trees and a pond and whatever? And they're going to move to these spaces. I could be totally wrong. I'm just talking off the top, right? But I can see the possibility of this happening because I know a lot of my colleagues have done this. They have moved to rural areas. They have their dish, they have their internet connection, and their bosses really don't care as long as they get their work into them. So COVID may change the face of rural America because of that. But that's just my conjecture. Call me a crazy man.
No, I think you make a good point, but there are also, as you discovered, there's resistance to this for a lot of reasons. We have a current, may end up in court up here. I won't go into all the details, but kind of an a regional emergency services unit. And the deputy director went to Florida during the pandemic because of some family medical issues. She could continue to do her job perfectly well. She didn't do any field stuff, anything like that. And the executive director just renewed her contract with the provision that she was going to continue to work remotely as long as she could. And his board threw a fit. His board's trying to fire him now. Wow. And he said, you know what? This is not something that required a board, action. I get to do the HR stuff, but they're not happy about it. But I bet if you actually asked them, what are you really upset about? There isn't anything practical. She doesn't have any live, on-site responsibilities whatsoever. So it's just, they don't like it, right? It really is that simple. But there's a lot of that that's out there.
Well, and like I said, I think, but the folks are going to be forced to, and as we're telling the small business, whether you like it or not, this is coming. The question is, are you going to embrace it and go with it? Or, are you going to be left behind? And if you're in business to be successful, in business to make money, are you shooting yourself in the foot? Because you can't put the genie back in the bottle. And as we're seeing now with this resurgence of the Delta variant, we very easily could be on lockdown again before the end of the year.
Yeah.
I hate to interrupt, but we're not in football with 2-minute warnings, but we are at our 5-minute warning. So we got 5 minutes to go if you'd like to do some closing remarks.
My only comment is, again, I think this is a project that we undertook, not knowing exactly what we were going to get out of it, but felt that it was needed as an educational tool for the small businesses in this area. We hope that now we're getting more inquiry, that we're going to see more businesses that want to participate, because perhaps now they are seeing more of the benefit of online and are at least willing to try it out. And so we want to make sure the site is ready for them. And again, we're very proud of the site and that it can be the tool we want it to be.
I just want to say, the issue is there are a set of challenges. And I believe those challenges can be met. I believe the challenges for rural America can be met, and it can be successful. But it's going to take work. And when I say work, I mean work. Specifically, really focused education, tech education, workshops, things that will, just in the language of business, there needs to be a big advertisement push to push these ideas and these concepts, about online and the viability of online and everything, internet. And I think it can be done, but it's just work, and it's going to take a united front to meet these challenges. But it can be done if we're focused. That's it.
Any last questions? All right, well, thank you. And we take up at what time tomorrow morning on Friday? 8?
8 o'clock.
Okay, I don't have the agenda in front of me,
No.
so.
8:30, right?
Is it 8:30? Okay.
It's 8 o'clock for Brett, but
No, okay. It'll take 8 o'clock to get me at 8:30. So yeah. All right. Well, thank you for attending, and everybody have a great evening.
thank you.
Talk to you
Take care.
later.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right.